Hi there.
Hi.
So you all are watching today as I interview Dr. Mark Trahan, who is an assistant professor at Texas State University, and he has special training with the Gottman Institute and Sue Johnson's courses for counseling and emotion-focused therapy. And he also has a private practice where he focuses on working with infidelity cases. And Mark, I thank you for joining us today
Sure,
because
Scott.
there's some questions that I think some of my clients or potential clients would like to know the answers to, as far as being in a couples situation and how to reconcile certain issues.
Okay.
And the first one is basically, how long does it take to rebuild trust after a partner has been unfaithful?
Well, I think it's important to understand what trust is. So most people don't really know how to conceptualize trust other than fidelity. And fidelity is a part of trust, but it's not the only part of trust. So fidelity is one part of trust when you feel like your partner is going to be loyal to you. But there's also other kinds of trust too. Another kind of trust is character trust, where you believe that your partner is the kind of person that would tell you the truth, or potentially has a set of values around integrity. And so sometimes when you feel like your partner has lied to you or is not a trustworthy person, it not only impacts the issue around fidelity, but it also impacts your belief in their character. Another kind of trust is what we call sliding door moments. This was a term that was coined by the Gottman Institute. And the idea is that it's missed opportunities for emotional connection. And so when couples have had missed opportunities to connect with each other emotionally over periods of time, they oftentimes are further apart or feel further apart from each other. And that's a certain kind of trust, right?
Yeah.
And so when trust is breached, particularly with fidelity, there are lots of issues that play into these kinds of trust that determine the level of the breach, levels of disconnection. Sue Johnson would call them attachment injuries. Dr. Gottman would talk about it as in terms of a breach of trust. And these things can range from a double betrayal, which would be a situation where the person not only broke fidelity, but also lied about the infidelity as well. So a double betrayal would be even a greater significant breach of trust or greater attachment wound. And then there's also situations where drugs and alcohol may be involved, maybe where there's a history of sexual addiction or sex and love addiction, where there's a pattern of infidelity that's occurred. So it's not just one event, it's multiple events that have happened. And there's also situations where one partner may not be ready to sit down and have the conversation about it. And they might feel like they don't want to engage with this person. They've already stepped out of the relationship. And so it may be even more challenging to try to mend this breach. And so it really depends on a range of issues related to the infidelity for trying to rebuild a relationship from the ground up. So it's a really complex question. I think it's one that really requires a professional to be overseeing the process, to know these different kinds of problems that can contribute to the trust, to the mistrust. So it can be anywhere from, in my experience, it could be probably on the lower end, anywhere between 9 months to a year to 3 years. In terms of length of time to really reestablish a relationship again. Trust takes a long time to rebuild, and so it takes time.
Definitely not an overnight thing.
No.
Okay.
No, and some people it takes years, and fortunately when you see a professional and you go into that environment, if they've been trained and have some idea of all of these different issues that might come into play, they will assist with making that process more focused so that you don't spend years and years in turmoil.
Yeah, because that I could see that just really harming relationships over the long haul if they don't have some professional guidance.
Right.
And then my other question, or the second question was, how transparent does a partner need to be after a breach of trust, and how soon should a disclosure occur, assuming that it is going to happen?
Yeah, yeah. So, I think that there are a little bit of nuances around the philosophies of this, but I think that if you take a look at the way in which most institutes, most training provides a context for this, the most important establishment is that of honesty, right? You can't rebuild trust without honesty. The problem with honesty is that it hurts. And the problem with honesty and it hurting is that sometimes when there's information that's provided to the betrayed partner that's detail-oriented related to the interactions that this person had with the affair partner, it can be even more hurtful. And it can really establish terrible memories that are very difficult to change over time. So I think that it's very important to have a professional guiding the process, assisting with where the line is between what is too much information and what is needed for honest communication about what has happened. Because details around sexual encounters, details around romantic encounters are not necessary for the recovery process. However, there are questions that the betrayed partner needs to ask and get the answers to in order to learn about the situation and to diminish their anxiety, because they are also having extremely high levels of hypervigilance as a response to the fact that they don't know all of the information. I think that that's why a professional, again, is really important, because in that process of disclosing that information, sometimes things can get hostile. And in that hostile environment, a professional needs to assist with de-escalating and assisting in creating a conversation that's going to be helpful, not hurtful. So, yeah.
Thank you. No, I appreciate you putting such a focus on how structured that really ideally needs to be to be beneficial, at least in the long run, for both partners.
Right.
And then one thing I also get is, I hope, our relationship can be the same, coming out of this. So, and I never know exactly how to answer that question, but maybe you can kind of put a spotlight on what at least one or both partners need to know about how the relationship, can it be the same coming out of these kinds of experiences?
Well, I think it depends. It depends again on the healing process. With the help of a trained professional and someone that can assist in that process, my experience has been that relationships can be better than they were prior to the infidelity. But that requires several elements. A relaying of trust, like relaying the foundation of trust. It takes a reestablishment of the attachment in the relationship and re-understanding how this new attachment will be, how you'll create the safety and the barriers around it to protect from future situations that might arise. And then taking the event and creating new meaning around it for the relationship. What does this mean for our future? And kind of making a recommitment to that relationship for the long term and what the couple wants out of their relationship for the future. So it can be really healing. It can create a really beautiful relationship. It can also be extremely destructive. And it can go down the route in which people end up having terrible relationships over time if the healing process does not flow, does not occur in a way that establishes that foundation. So,
yeah, well put. And it's good to know that people can have really good, beneficial relationships after something like this, and maybe even better. Although I think that would probably be dependent on, having some professional help through the process.
Absolutely.
So, all right. Well, thanks so much for being with me, Dr. Trahan.
You're welcome.
Look forward to talking to you again, possibly in the future.
Thanks, Scott.